that just this month of June alone, and we're barely 20 days in, we've seen twice the number of heat wave days as compared to last year. What is even more concerning is the dire shortage of water, even in some of the ploshest areas of the capital, which is known as, of course, Lutyens Delhi. But the party that governs Delhi, the Aam Aadmi Party, has passed the buck, saying it is because Haryana, the neighbouring state, is not releasing adequate water that Delhi is parched. Now, you even have this rather piquant situation where the minister in charge for water resources in Delhi, Atishi, is threatening to sit on a hunger strike in front of the Prime Minister's residence unless the Prime Minister solves the water crisis. Now, ladies and gentlemen, but let's be very, very clear about this. Yes, Delhi is a divided government. It's half a state. The Aam Aadmi Party government does not necessarily control all levers of the state, as it were, here in the national capital. But the Aam Aadmi Party is the elected government of Delhi. They've got more than 60 MLAs in a house of 70. Should they now stop passing the buck on some of the most pressing problems of the national capital and residents here and accept their responsibility and solve this water crisis instead of every time crying wolf and saying that the centre is responsible or Haryana is responsible or somebody else is responsible? But first, the story.
यहाँ पे पानी मिल नहीं रहा, टॉयलेट वगैरह में भी पानी नहीं है बिल्कुल।
ये पिछले 1.5-2 दिन से तो बिल्कुल पानी नहीं आया।
मैंने प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी से ये विनम्र निवेदन किया है कि वो दिल्ली के लोगों को पानी दिलवाएं। उनको किसी प्रकार से दिल्ली के लोगों को पानी दिलवाना होगा।
सिर्फ अपनी चोरी, कालाबाजारी और पानी का गोरखधंधा, ये है। आतिशी को अगर सत्याग्रह करना है तो अपनी पार्टी के खिलाफ करे, जिसने जल बोर्ड को लूट का अड्डा बना दिया।
पानी की समस्या का समाधान करने की बजाय वो राजनीति कर रहे हैं। वो कभी हिमाचल को, हरियाणा को, कभी केंद्र सरकार को दोष देते हैं, जबकि उनकी अंदर की व्यवस्था चरमराई हुई है।
So let's give you the hard numbers first before we go to our panelists. What exactly and how much exactly is the deficit of water in the national capital? Now, Delhi's daily requirement stands at something like 129 crore gallons every single day. We're looking at a population of 2.3 crores or so. What Delhi is getting right now, remember, Delhi has very little its own sources of water. Much of its water comes from other states. What it's receiving right now, it's just a shade under 97 crore gallons per day. So what that means is there is a substantial shortfall. And the shortfall is about 30-odd crore gallons, 32 crore gallons of water every single day. Now, the government of Delhi's contention is that water is not coming. But Haryana, which is the biggest source of water for Delhi, says that they're releasing the water. The water is getting leaked either through wastage or pilferage, or even worse, through these water tanker mafias, which they claim the Delhi government is not able to control. The question is, this whole politics between Aam Aadmi Party and BJP. Now, the Aam Aadmi Party's charge is that Delhi is not getting its fair share of water from Haryana. Like I gave you the numbers, 129 is what Delhi needs. It's currently getting about 96, 97. The BJP, the Aam Aadmi Party is alleging, is sponsoring this water crisis in the capital. The AAP is also saying, in fact, the Water Resources Minister of the Aam Aadmi Party, of the Delhi government, Atishi, has said that she will ask the Prime Minister to intervene, and if he doesn't intervene, then she will sit on a hunger strike outside his residence. But here is the Aam Aadmi Party's plea in the Supreme Court. Remember, this matter has gone all the way up to the apex court of this country. The Aam Aadmi Party is saying this is an unprecedented situation, unprecedented demand for water in Delhi because of the heat wave, because the heat wave has been particularly harsh this summer. They are requesting through the Supreme Court the states of Haryana, UP, Himachal, etc. to release extra water. They've also requested for extra water for a period of a month to meet this excess demand. But the state of Haryana, the other states who've been made a request to, they have a different stand. Haryana says they are supplying on a daily basis 1,049 cusecs over and above what was agreed with Delhi. They are also saying that they've released 137 cusecs of extra water via Himachal. Also, why hasn't Punjab? By the way, Punjab also has an Aam Aadmi Party government. It's a source of very rich water sources, as you would imagine. Why hasn't Punjab released the extra water that it has through the Sutlej-Yamuna link canal? These are perfectly valid questions, and we'll try and put this to the representatives of the Aam Aadmi Party and the BJP. Shazia Ilmi is joining us. She's national spokesperson of the BJP. Anmol Pawar is spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party. Umesh Sehgal is former chief secretary of Delhi. And Dipinder Kapoor is director at the water program at the Centre for Science and Environment. Let me start with you, Anmol Pawar. You know, it's a very simple equation. Delhi's water problem is Delhi's water problem. There is an elected government whose job it is to solve that problem. You've gone up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's given an order. You are saying Haryana is not releasing enough water. Haryana says there's evidence to show that more than the asked for amount of water is being released, but you are not able to control the pilferage. You are not able to control the water tanker mafia. At the end of the day, it's the residents of Delhi who are suffering, and that's on you, the elected Delhi government, not on some neighbouring state.
Jaka, we all know that this water which is released by Haryana is in pursuance of an order which was passed by the Honorable Supreme Court and an MOU which was signed between 5 states, which includes Delhi, Rajasthan, Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh and Haryana. So 90% of the water requirements of Delhi are met through neighbouring states. And the Honorable Supreme Court time and again very categorically stated that non-release of sufficient water by Haryana is in violation of its order, and that whenever there's shortage of water, the court has directed to supply as much water as is required to maintain the pond level at Wazirabad Reservoir to full. Now, the level of water at Wazirabad is 668 feet. And in the normal course, it should be 674.5 feet. So the water capacity, the water treatment plants are unable to work at its full capacity because the raw water is not released from the Haryana government. And
no, Anmol, there are 2 points. There are 2 points here. One second. There are 2 points here. One, if it is your contention that Haryana is not releasing as much water as it has been directed by the Supreme Court, please, by all means, go back to the Supreme Court and ask them to pull up the Haryana government. You're not doing that, number one. Number two, you know, there is a fair distance between Haryana and the Wazirabad water reservoir, which comes under the Delhi government. It's not Haryana's problem that you're not able to crack down on the water tankers or the pilferage or the wastage of water that's happening. That is on you, Anmol Pawar.
You have raised 2 pertinent questions. One is about tanker mafia and one is about the transmission of water from Haryana to Delhi. We invested 500 crores to build a carrier link channel from Haryana to Delhi, which has reduced transmission losses from 30% to 5%.
Okay.
We have replaced 3,500 kilometers of pipelines and have instituted another 7,600 kilometers of new pipelines. And as far as tanker mafias are concerned, the private tanker mafias are on the Haryana side before the CLC and DSP branch, which is not under the jurisdiction of Delhi Jal Board. It has been stated by the Delhi government in the affidavit which is filed before the Honorable Supreme Court.
Okay.
And when we approached the Supreme Court on 13th of June, the Supreme Court directed us to give a representation to the Upper Yamuna Canal Board within 24 hours.
Sir, there is a board. There is an independent board that monitors on a daily basis the amount of water that's released. But be that as it may, Shazia Elmi, please respond. The Aam Aadmi Party has been going on and on saying Haryana is not releasing water, Uttar Pradesh is not releasing water, Himachal is not releasing water, and that's why Delhiites are having to suffer. Please respond, Shazia Elmi.
I need 10 seconds.
No, 1 second. Let her respond.
Allow me to speak uninterrupted. So there are 2 things here. We just heard yet another blatant lie. I'll tell you exactly what Supreme Court has said. And the Supreme Court has questioned the Delhi government about the action it has taken against the so-called tanker mafia. These are the words. What is the action that you have taken? And you're clearly inept to deal with it. SC warned it would ask the Delhi police to take action that the Aam Aadmi Party is, if the Aam Aadmi Party is unable to take action against the tanker mafia. So pretty much on the lines of how this happened with the liquor scam, they have ensured the Delhi Jal Board actually is now running at a debt. There is actually a debt of 17,000 crores as opposed to a profit of 600 crores, which it was making before Arvind Kejriwal's Aam Aadmi Party took over. Now look at these numbers. So much so that they have refused, they have been instructed by the Delhi High Court and CAG to do an audit, but they've refused to do so. Not just that, the Wazirabad barrage, this is my subject, Zaka, please allow me to speak. Wazirabad barrage, because their own contractor was not allowed to, because it was an L2 tender and not a L1, it has not been dredged, dredging has not been done, desilting is not done. So all the water that is coming from Haryana is not even being able to be contained and sanitized for consumption.
No, their contention is Haryana is not even releasing the amount of water that the Supreme Court has asked it to release. No, that's Shazia, you need to answer that question.
I'm coming to that.
Yeah.
I'm coming to that. I'm answering all of that. Oh, really, but only if you let me speak. We waste time when we interject. So, Haryana government, their papers that we have, the Haryana government has said that we are giving more water than we had agreed to do. And not just that, the Haryana government has also said that no, not once did they even ask us to release more water. Though we have been doing it on a regular basis, but the problem is with the dredging, they are not able to contain it only because for 8 years there was no dredging or desilting done. And not just that, they have blamed the Haryana government, Himachal government, UP government.
Yeah.
Exactly what they did with the pollution, with the air pollution situation in December. It's like history repeating itself. If they're clearly unable to do so, like they did during COVID time, after all the hue and cry, finally they wrote to the Home Minister and said, we need, and then COVID centers were made. Yeah. So similarly, they're doing the same thing. Either it's Delhi police's fault, or it's the LG's fault, or it's the Haryana government, or it's Himachal government, or it's UP, or it's good old BJP.
So, let me open this up, please. Let me please open this up. Umesh Sehgal is joining us. He's a former Chief Secretary. There was, of course, an era in Delhi before the Aam Aadmi Party came to office, came to power. At that time, we didn't hear about all of this friction between Haryana and Delhi and Himachal and Delhi and UP and Delhi. I can't think of, I've been living in the city for the last 20 years. I can't think of a time when we've had bad summers, maybe not as bad as this one, but pretty harsh summers. But water crisis, people running for water, water tanker mafia, running amok. I've not seen this in Delhi. So clearly something was happening, back then, which is not happening right now. Umesh Sehgal.
You think the difference is that there were always differences between Delhi and Haryana. Always differences.
Okay.
We wanted more water because in 1996 the agreement has been made. Delhi's population has almost more than doubled from that time. And Punjab's population, the Haryana population has gone up by 15-20%. So we have been wanting more water. And they have been insisting that in 1996 we agreed to supply a certain amount of water. That has not been revised, so we are not going to give you any more water. These problems never were discussed publicly. They were discussed privately, sitting in offices. The ministers used to take meetings. Lieutenant Governor used to take meetings. He used to speak, and the minister said, I have been myself to Haryana a couple of times when I was Chief Secretary, trying to solve this problem, get more water. So we can't say that this dispute is new. Dispute is not new. Only fact that it is now being washed in public as a dirty cloth is new. And so there is a shortage of water. Let us be clear. The Jamna, Pani, the Ganga waters, they are clearly not adequate for the population that it serves. Now you need irrigation. For irrigation, you need water for water supply. One point that we made in our time, and we won this from the Supreme Court, they said drinking water gets precedence over irrigation. That is what enabled us to get a far more share from Haryana than what we would otherwise be entitled to, considering the if you just take the population ratio. Now, because drinking water is the need in Delhi, and basically agriculture needs are there in UP and Haryana. And then we got water from the Ganga also. The Sonia Vihar water treatment plant was made, and that is running very satisfactorily. And in parts of Delhi which are coming by supplying from the Ganga, they have not facing any problem, because Sonia Vihar is comparatively a new water treatment plant. The earlier water treatment plant need upgrading. They don't need just talk, they don't need public statements. They need upgradation, both technologically and not just desilting. It is also the technology. The technology needs to change. All this wastage of water of 50% is too much. This just cannot be tolerated. From 48% it goes up to 54%.
So
48% was bad enough. So, one more thing. Let me just say one more thing. We are now depending only on river waters. You see, this global warming is going to lead to glaciers being melted. We are going to get less and less water in rivers. Let us be ready for getting less water in rivers rather than fighting in the newspapers.
I want to ask Deepinder Kapoor this. I think that's a fabulous point that Mr. Sehgal is making, that at the end of the day, Mr. Kapoor, Delhi has to evolve its own sources of water. It has to revive its own water bodies. It has to improve the water table. You have both the Yamuna bed as well as now the Ganga. But ultimately, unless the barrages in Delhi and this whole stretch of the natural reservoirs, the natural waterways that Delhi has, unless that's revived, and may I add, there was a time, when cities like Chennai, for example, used to face a great water crisis, and then they compulsorily insisted that every house that was being built must necessarily have rainwater harvesting, otherwise they wouldn't give clearance. Is it time to think about those measures in a place like Delhi? Revive its own natural water bodies and at the same time also ensure mandatory compliance by residents?
See, these measures which you are saying will certainly address the shortage. But the bigger question is that this crisis we are seeing today, we did not see it 3 months ago. So let's be very clear that this crisis is not a normal crisis. So it is quite shameful that instead of trying to address this crisis today, both the parties are fighting over who is responsible for the crisis. If the crisis was so grave, it should have been there 3 months ago, 6 months ago. Let's also remember 3 months ago, Bangalore had a similar crisis. And the crisis was a shortage of supply and 3 months of no rain in Bangalore. So instead of taking this as an emergency situation and drawing emergency plans to cover for a month and a half, that's the time we are talking about. We see protests on the road. We see threats of holding more protests. Where is the willingness actually to sit and see how much is the shortage, as the ex-chief secretary has rightly highlighted? Where is that effort to say how much actually more water needs to come? Where is the mapping of the areas in Delhi where there is a shortage? And both the parties sitting, drawing emergency plans.
But may I ask you, Mr. Kapoor, couldn't this have been anticipated? The weather department was saying. The weather department was saying that there is the prediction of an El Nino. So, Shazia, one second. Let me ask Mr. Kapoor. Mr. Kapoor, I'm sorry I'm interrupting. One second, Shazia, one second, please, one at a time. Mr. Kapoor, please hear me out. The weather department 3 months ago, I remember, had very clearly said that there is the possibility of an El Nino-like condition happening in the summer. And particularly northwest India, which includes Delhi, they had made this prediction. My point is, who is then to follow up on this? Is it the elected government of Delhi? Is it the government of Haryana? Is it the government of Uttar Pradesh? Whose job is it to prepare for such an eventuality?
The magnanimity should be from both sides, rather than making it a political issue. Now we will have floods in 1 month's time. Then we'll be having the same debate. You will be again calling the same participants. And then but why don't you ask them what is their preparedness for floods?
No.
Isn't this the time
I am very clear in my mind, Mr. Kapoor. Whether it is floods or drought, The elected government is responsible. The buck stops with the elected government. I have no doubts in my mind whatsoever. The elected government has to hold the responsibility for it. And if they've not prepared for it, then they need to be held accountable for the same.
See, I'm not here to make a political comment. I'm trying to tell you, if there is a shortage of water, then both parties need to sit and address it, rather than making it a show of strength and identifying who's
Shazia
more
Ilmi,
responsible.
no one could have predicted this. This is an emergency situation. It's unprecedented. Like I said, I've been living in the city for the last 20 years. I've not seen this kind of summer. This kind of scorching heat.
Okay, so Zaka,
instead of sitting with each other across the table, finding a solution, what are you doing?
So Zaka, there's a summer action plan for which LG has actually sent out, and the secretaries were present, but the water minister was totally absent. She refused to be a part of it. There was no summer action plan. This kind of planning is done in the month of April.
Please don't lie.
It is done every year, but this time they were doing bail to
One
jail,
second,
jail
Anmol,
to bail,
Anmol, 1 second, please. Let her finish. I'll come to you.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
No, I know. And I want to tell the gentleman here. So, sir, there is a water ministry in Delhi government. It is with Aam Aadmi Party, it is not with Congress, it is not with BJP. And if indeed there is a problem and the water minister doesn't know or doesn't care, then she should resign and allow and say that we will give it to the center.
Sir, 1 second. Let her finish. I'll come to you, please. Yes. Yes, finish, Shazia. Yeah.
No, I just want to tell the gentleman who spoke before me that I just want to tell him what the position in Delhi is. So Delhi has a water ministry. Atishi is the water minister. The buck has to stop at the ministry level, because otherwise Atishi should just say, I want to resign, instead of doing any kind of protest or hartal. I mean, how does that solve the problem in any way? And if indeed, like whether it comes to pollution in December or water crisis in this month, if you're not capable, then you say you're not, instead of passing the buck.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is, somebody has to take the responsibility.
Anmol,
So
Power, now respond. I mean, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the water minister. You can't turn around and say, oh, if the Prime Minister does not address this issue, I'm going to sit in a hunger strike in front of his house. For God's sake, the Prime Minister's job is not to solve the water crisis in half a state. He's got other bigger things to deal with. Come on, Anmol Power. You are the elected government. The buck stops with you.
Zaka, you made some relevant points. The fact is that we have made every possible effort to resolve this water crisis. It is for the Bharatiya Janata Party to answer that when the Himachal Pradesh government has promised to release 137 cusecs of water, the Honorable Chief Minister agreed to release water, then why is the Haryana government obstructing and not facilitating the release of water through Haryana to Delhi?
Why isn't the Punjab government releasing water? Please tell me. You have a government in Punjab. Why is the Punjab government not releasing extra water?
Please allow me to complete.
I'm asking you a question. Please answer the question.
Second, I'll answer.
Why is the Punjab government not releasing water? You said for the pollution problem, the stubble burning is happening in Punjab. When we come to power in Punjab, one second. I'm putting forth the pain of the Aam Aadmi of Delhi, who voted for you in overwhelming numbers. When the pollution problem happened, you said Punjab is the culprit. When we come to power in Punjab, we'll put an end to it. It's been 2 years since you came to power in Punjab. What have you done? Nothing. The pollution problem just persists. Similarly, I'm asking you, if there's a water problem and you're saying Haryana is not releasing, what about Punjab? You're in power in Punjab. Why don't you ask the Aam Aadmi Party government in Punjab to release water?
Zaka, the point is, do the BJP even believe in cooperative federalism or not? When the people are in dire stress, they are in need of water, then is it the time to play a blame game or politicize the issue, or address the problem which is in front of us and find solutions head on?
So, sir, whose responsibility is it to find a solution? Is it your responsibility or is it the BJP? Whose responsibility is it?
Questions have been raised about what the Delhi government has done in past 10 years. We have augmented the water capacity from 840 million gallons per day to 1,005 million gallons per day. 99.6% unauthorized colonies are receiving water through pipeline. 93% of colonies are receiving water through pipelines. Around 31
DDA water bodies have been
Sir,
rejuvenated
I'm
so far.
showing you
Please
water
allow me to complete.
water
Sir-
tankers in the heart of
Sir,
Delhi, in Lutyens
let
Delhi,
me-
in Chanakyapuri. Diplomatic missions are struggling for
let me-
water.
The combined capacity of DJB water tankers, which was 1203 in January 2024, along with these private tankers, it constitutes only 5 to 6 million gallons per MGD, which is 0.5% of the total
Do you
supply.
know,
So this,
I
so
want to
this
just come in.
always
You know,
talking about these
I
tanker
am
mafias.
very
Because you
clear
can't
in
be
my
honorable
mind,
minister.
viewers, and I hope
Let
you
me
are
complete.
too,
The
that there is
honorable
no
minister
way
has written-
an elected government, and by the way,
honorable
water is not a
minister-
divided subject, it's a state subject. And the Delhi government has full authority over water. Yes, I do concede the part that Delhi does not have as many of its natural sources of water as, let's say, Haryana does, or Uttar Pradesh does, or Kerala does, or Karnataka does. Fair enough. I'm not disputing that fact. But to say that, oh, we are not responsible because Haryana is not releasing water, Himachal is not releasing water, or somebody else is not releasing water, is simply passing the buck. It's shameful. It's shameful that it's come down to that. That's the case as far as the water crisis is concerned. That's the case as far as the pollution problem is concerned. And I really hope that the Aam Aadmi Party, instead of passing the buck on other state governments, central government, this government, that government, actually sits down and finds a solution to this problem, as you have been mandated by the people of Delhi to do. Umesh Sehgal, this whole business of differentiated government,
Yes.
Delhi having one party, centre having another party. When Sheila Dikshit was in power, for the 15 years that she was in power, a good 5 to 7 years, BJP was ruling. We didn't hear about this then.
No, you see, the issue is being politicized. The issue is being politicized. Let us be clear that there is a problem, and the problem is going to be magnified. It's not going to go away. Renuka Dam is being thought of for the last 40 years, and nothing has come out. Now they say it will come up in the next 10 years. Well, Renuka Dam is not coming up, and I doubt if it will come up. Again, it's an interstate problem. Water is not a simple issue which you can just sort out sitting in the one party sitting in Delhi can sort it out. We have rain. We have we have 20 inches of rain every year. We have floods. The Delhi government did start a scheme at one time, a pilot scheme of some of the flood water being taken into the groundwater. I don't know what has come out of that scheme. One has not heard of this.
No, but Sehgal Saab, can I ask you a question? There are some states in this country.
Let me just finish.
Give me 10 seconds. There are some states in this country where it is mandatory to have rainwater harvesting for every home that is built. Why can't Delhi institute that?
No, it is mandatory here also for 500-yard plots and even for smaller parts.
So then why is that excess water, why is that excess rainwater not being then
problem is
going back to the ground water table?
Most of the colonies are coming up in unauthorized areas where there is no building plan sanction required.
Exactly.
So those are the areas in which groundwater harvesting is not being done. And it has to be done. Why should all this pani which falls during the rains, the rain period is about 2 months.
Yeah.
Why should that even 10% of that water flow into the Jamna? Why can't we take all of it into the groundwater? And now then when we need it, we can take it out.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Theoretically, it should be done. Practically, there may be technological problems, but I don't think the country, we have even approached the CSIR, or we have even approached the IITs, Delhi or wherever, to help us find
Mr.
such a
Kapoor,
solution.
I come back to the larger question.
A couple of crores.
Today is, this year is a particularly warm year. It could even be the case next year, the year after that. What is our plan? What is our plan to deal with acute water shortage like we are seeing this summer? Because climate change is real. It's only going to get hotter year after year.
So there are two things, like the ex-chief secretary said. Firstly, there are rather three things. One, you have to augment the Delhi water supply. Let's not hide behind numbers and facts. Yes, it has to be augmented. Secondly, as you yourself are saying, let's do something about water conservation, which requires an approach beyond just household level water conservation. And the third is reusing our treated wastewater. So reusing treated wastewater to augment groundwater recharge This is what we are also proposing. And we are proposing also these big lakes in Delhi, which can provide a recharged source from treated wastewater as a dedicated water supply to the southern fringe of Delhi, which is suffering the most from water crisis.
You know, there are I think 1 lakh, from what I remember, 6 lakh flats across the national capital region. Why can't the authorities in Delhi and in neighbouring satellite cities have a law which says every high-rise building will only be given a clearance if you have a water recycling plant of your own?
Can I come in,
Please
Saket? Can I respond?
Not all areas of Delhi have a poor groundwater.
So I just want to...
Where I stay in northwest Delhi, the groundwater is 35 feet. You don't need groundwater recharge in northwest Delhi. So don't prescribe, blanket solutions.
No. Mr. Kapoor, the point is that you speak to the people who are suffering, they are at their wits' end. In a modern day country, that people have to run behind water tankers in a place like Lutyens, Delhi, all of us should be ashamed about it. We should be absolutely... What do you mean, let's not make sensational about it? What do you mean, let's not make sensational about it? There's no water. There's no water. Families are suffering. They're running behind water tankers. What do you mean, let's not make sensational about it? I'm sorry.
Yes, you are...
No, I have every right to sensationalize it because the people of Delhi are feeling the pain. Because you have water in your locality doesn't mean it's not a problem for the rest of the city. The city is absolutely at its wits' end because of this problem. And I'm sorry to say this. I'm very clear in my mind, viewers. I'm wrapping up this first part of the debate. It is absolutely, fully, squarely, 100% the responsibility of the elected government to provide water to each and every one of its citizens. And if it is not able to do it, it has failed. It has failed the people of Delhi. Let's now move on to the next topic. And this is an equally important one. It's in the realm of foreign policy. It's something that deeply concerns and affects India. A top American congressional delegation led by former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi today met with the Dalai Lama, as well as top leaders of the Tibetan government in exile in Dharamshala. It comes after the United States Congress passed what is called the Resolve Tibet Act. It had bipartisan support, both from the Democrats and the Republicans. This now awaits the signature of the US President Joe Biden. The act basically says that China must cooperate to reopen its talks with the Dalai Lama, as well as other Tibetan leaders that have, of course, been on hold for the last decade and a half or so. It has also urged China to address the demands of the Tibetan people concerning their historical, cultural, religious, and language identities. The legislation and of course the meeting which this congressional delegation have had with the Tibetan government in exile has irked the Chinese leadership, and Beijing has issued a stern warning vowing resolute measures for what they call interference in the internal matters of China. The Chinese government has also said that the United States is sending a wrong signal to the world, adding that the Dalai Lama is not a purely religious figure and that he is engaged in anti-China activities. With Prime Minister Modi's third term, this is a big move from both the United States as well as India against the Chinese regime, the CCP regime, given that there are frictions even now, 4 years on, at the line of actual control. On Brass Tacks, we decode this geopolitical power play that is underway.
Irrespective of what religion, what tradition, people of the world should be peaceful, happy. That's our goal.
There was a visit of the current president of China to Washington, D.C., and Dianne Feinstein and I said to him, we are objecting to what you are doing to the culture of Tibet. You're trying to erase it. He said, you know what you're talking about. They are trying something that we cannot let them get away with.
I see that compassion not only in His Holiness, but in all of you. the Tibetan people.
All right, I want to first go across to Mr. Tenzin Leshke. He's the spokesperson of the Central Tibetan Administration, which is the Tibetan government in exile here in India. Thank you very much, Mr. Tenzin Leshke, for speaking with us. First things first, the congressional delegation was in Dharamshala today. They met with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. China, of course, has taken grave offense to it, saying that it completely upsets the apple cart as far as US-China relations are concerned, and also ties between India and China. How would you respond to that specific allegation by China?
See, Zaga, there is nothing to worry because, like, it is for the benefit of China that they came here, right? Because if you look at these polarized states, what China has been doing so far in Tibet was wrong. But they've been claiming that they have liberated Tibet, they have done all these good things and all. But in fact, when you look at Tibet, it's totally opposite, right? There's a repression, there's a suppression. They have built up all these colonial-style boarding schools. They are collecting DNA samplings by the policemen. So all these policies are not for the Tibetan people. Okay. What they have been doing so far since 1949-50s is just for their stabilities, right? So therefore, I think this visit, this important visit, is to just to let China know that there is a serious problem, right, within China. So what they should do, the China, rather than just being complaining to India, to America, what they should do is they should introspect and see what they have done wrong with the Tibetan people. Okay. So if they have done this exercise, the high-level delegation would not be here.
So let me open this up now to the rest of our panelists. Mr. Andrew K.P. Liang is a China strategist who's joining us from Hong Kong. Professor Brahma Chalani is Professor of Strategic Studies at the CPR. Professor Chalani, you know, there is a school of thought which says, why are we letting the Americans fire off our shoulders? This is basically an American congressional delegation coming here to India and making a geopolitical statement against China at a time when India has its own plate full when it comes to its own troubles with China. Does this further, you know, as far as the Chinese point of view is concerned, further put India in the American camp, and therefore, you know, America is using India for its own sort of political ends, as it were?
Not at all. This is not the first time that a bipartisan U.S. congressional delegation has met with the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala. So we shouldn't treat this as a development that is unique. Nancy Pelosi has long been a supporter of the Tibetan cause. She's been to Dharamsala in the past. She has led U.S. congressional delegation to Dharamsala. The issues are more fundamental. What's happening in Tibet today is a cause of great concern. There's greater repression in Tibet. There is an effort on the part of Xi Jinping's regime to stamp out Tibetan identity. And more importantly, while Tibetans in the world are praying for the Dalai Lama's long life, China is waiting for the Dalai Lama's demise so that it can install a puppet successor. If it can install the next Dalai Lama, it'll be able to tighten its grip on Tibet.
Okay.
Allowing the congressional delegation to call on the Dalai Lama and meet with Tibetan parliament members is nothing unusual for India. India has been doing that in the past. And I think the real issue is back in the US. The Biden administration is reluctant to speak up on China, especially on Tibet. The congressional delegation visit to Dharamsala in a way seeks to compensate for the Biden administration's reluctance to speak up on Tibet.
Okay.
But there's a dual test that Biden faces today. One is whether he will sign the new Tibet policy law. There's a new bill that has been passed recently by the US Congress, whether he will sign that into law. And once he decides to sign that into law, he'll also have to issue a statement on the law and on Tibet. And second, he had pledged during his last presidential campaign in 2020 that unlike the then President Donald Trump, he would meet with the Dalai Lama. Now the Dalai Lama is going to the US for treatment for his knees. Will President Biden fulfill his own campaign pledge and call on the Dalai Lama?
Okay, let me ask Andrew KP Liang, why then has China taken such grave umbrage at what is a routine meeting? Not the first time it's happened, perhaps not the last time it's going to happen. What's the big deal if a congressional delegation from a foreign country meets with a person who is widely regarded around the world, not just amongst the Tibetan people, but he has a huge fan following around the world? What's China's problem?
Well, I think China is irked by this consistent Western rhetoric that ignores the whole history of Tibet. Talking about only 1949, Tibet existed greatly as part of China long before, centuries before 1949 as part of China. And it ignores the fact that the Tibetan people lives are miraculously transformed from the former serfdom, 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 under the previous regimes. And also ignores the fact that Tibetan religion has been allowed to be practiced widely. And it ignores all the developments in Tibet. And of course, Tibet has always been part of China. And that's the rhetoric that...
what about the Tibetan language, their culture, their traditions? There is a concerted attempt to try and impose the Mandarin language, Putonghua, on the people of Tibet.
Well, naturally, because Tibet is part of China, and of course the Tibetan people are encouraged to learn the national language. But don't forget the Tibetan language is highly respected. You look at the renminbi, the Chinese currency, the Tibetan language has been there all along since the founding of the People's Republic of China. There's never changed. So I think
there have been from time and time again, particularly in the last 10, 12 years or so, all kinds of atrocities against Tibetan activists. Any kind of demonstration by Tibetan activists has been met with an iron hand in China. Why are you so afraid?
Well, it's not afraid, but no country would tolerate separatism in the same way that India cannot tolerate the separatism of various parts of its territory under dispute, and no other Western countries, Spain, for example, or even the United States, as far as any attempt to separate any kind of its territory.
Let me ask Mr. Tenzin, as far as India's point of view is concerned, of course, it's very well known that India has its own set of troubles with China, particularly at the line of actual control. It's going to be 4 years. In fact, it is 4 years since the Galwan incident at the line of actual control. And this is now a new normal. There is an ongoing border standoff with China. Do you think the visit of the congressional delegation at this time will only further complications between India and China with its own set of bilateral problems?
No, not at all. Not at all. See, as I said before, it is for the well-being of all, right? Because if China looked into and do what they should do with regard to Tibet, then where will be the problem with India and China on the border, right? Because if they could have done as per what they should do, Zaka, right? So when did the India-China problem start? Soon after China occupied Tibet.
Yeah.
Right. So the matter is Tibet issue has to be resolved. So we being the Central Tibet administration has been consistently telling the Chinese government that the long-standing Sino-Tibetan conflict has to be resolved. Right. And China has been delaying so far with an excuse, with complaints, and with all this suspicious mindset. So what China has to do is come forward and do the dialogue.
Professor Chelani, if indeed India believes in the Tibetan cause and believes in Tibetan independence. And of course, we've been hosts to the Tibetan government in exile for the better part of the last 60 years plus. Then India should revoke its stated position of recognizing one China. Just like China, right after the abrogation of Article 370, you've seen that statement about what they said about Kashmir. So why should then India recognize one China? Because it is an inconsistent position. On the one hand, you say one China, which has been a stated policy for a number of years now. And on the other hand, congressional delegation, government in exile, hosted as guests of the state. It's a contradictory position.
Zakar, it appears that you are not up to date on India's position. I'm sorry to say that. The last time India stated a one China position was 14 years ago in 2010. India has not for 14 years ever in any form stated that it believes in one China principle. Secondly, China became India's neighbor how? By occupying Tibet. It imposed itself as India's neighbor. Had Tibet remained self-governing like Taiwan, today Tibet would have been the world's 10th largest country. Tibet is very much at the core of the India-China divide. What are China's claims to Indian territories today? They're all based on alleged historical links to Tibet. China never says that these territories had any Han-Chinese connection in the past. All the claims on Indian territories are based on alleged historical links to Tibet.
Okay.
Why did China encroach on borderlands in Ladakh? Why are we having this tense military standoff for so long, for more than 4 years? Now it's entered the 5th year last month. It's not because these borderlands, they claim, had any link with Han China. The alleged links are with Tibet. So Tibet is very much at the center of the India-China divide. It's very much in India's interest to raise the profile of the Tibet issue. It's very much in India's interest to allow foreign delegations, including a congressional delegation from the United States, to meet with the Dalai Lama. It's also very much in India's interest to work with the United States to ensure that China does not succeed in its designs to install a puppet Dalai Lama once the present Dalai Lama passes away.
Mr. Andrew Leung, that is really the crux of the issue. China is simply playing the waiting game. It's biding time that the current Dalai Lama, His Holiness, he's of an advanced age, that once he moves on, once he passes away, then you are hoping that you can install a puppet Dalai Lama. That's not going to be acceptable to the Tibetan people, leave alone the rest of the world.
Well, in the same way, the United States, also with certain factions in India, are trying to also to game the remaining months or years of the Dalai Lama, so as to influence the decision to pick the next succession favorable to this idea of within political mark separatism. So I think that the game is on both sides.
Mr. Leung, you fully well know that the next Dalai Lama will only be chosen after the passing of the current one. And to say that the United States is influencing the current Dalai Lama, that's just not possible.
Well, I mean that's the whole politics is like that. Because you just sell ideas, plant ideas in people's minds. That's part of politics. But anyway, as far as China is concerned, China would never allow Tibet to be separated. And this game of twisted rhetoric, ignoring history, ignoring the lives of the Tibetan people, ignoring the fact that the culture is still being honored, it would never succeed as far as Beijing is concerned.
Okay, I'll give the final word to Mr. Tenzing. The selection of the next Dalai Lama, and I asked this to Mr. Leung as well, China says they will decide who's going to be the next Dalai Lama. How would the Tibetan people view that?
It's a pure hypocrites, right? The present 14th Dalai Lama, they are shaming him, demeaning him, or all this. They are doing what they should. They are calling him by such names. Even right now, they are calling him as separatist. They are calling him as political person, whatever they're doing. But they want to have an authority on the 15th. So basically, if you look at China, the communist regime is atheists. They are non-believers. They are the one who are not the defender of the faith, but they are the one who are the obstructions, the destroyer of the faith. Since the occupation of Tibet, they have destroyed more than 6,000 monasteries. And now they are putting up lots of these legal mechanisms to earn the legitimacy. But they do not have the authority. Historically, traditionally, this reincarnation tradition, which has gone for 700 years, is purely a Tibetan tradition, and China do not have any say on it.
All right,
Especially
Mr. Tenzin, I'm afraid I'm
communist.
completely out of time, but thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Tenzin, Professor Chalani, and Andrew K.P. Liang for joining us. We'll see how this story plays out, not just during the course of the visit of this delegation, but also beyond, because clearly there is great power competition between China and the United States, and whether or not India is getting sucked into that, we'll have to wait and see. But of course, India also has to protect its own interests when it comes to China, particularly when it comes to the standoff at the line of actual control. That's a wrap. This was Brass Tacks. We were coming to you from the Federal Bank CNN News 18 Primetime Studio. I'll catch you again tomorrow night. Good night.
नालंदा एक पहचान है, एक सम्मान है, नालंदा एक मूल्य है, नालंदा एक मंत्र है, गौरव है, गाथा है। नालंदा है उद्घोष इस सत्य का कि आग की लपटों में पुस्तकें भले जल जाएं, लेकिन आग की लपटें ज्ञान को नहीं मिटा सकती। नालंदा के ध्वंस ने भारत को अंधकार से भर दिया था। अब इसकी पुनर्स्थापना भारत के स्वर्णिम युग की शुरुआत करने जा रहा है।
Presented by
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The biggest story of the day comes from North Korea, and the story is in the pictures. It's a Putin-Kim bromance, perfectly choreographed and timed. We'll tell you what happened in Pyongyang today and what the world should make of it. In India, the American delegation met the Dalai Lama and poked China with some harsh statements. Is it time for New Delhi to tweak its Tibet policy? We'll discuss. In Canada, they're celebrating a Khalistani terrorist in Parliament and exposing Western hypocrisy on terrorism. What should